Going to call the November 25, 2019 Building Appeals Board meeting for the City of Ojai to order. Let's have a roll call, please.
Chair Bill Ulrich.
Here.
Vice Chair Tom Farmer.
Here.
Board Member Bob Daddy.
Present.
Board Member Judy Murphy. Here. Board Member Dale Hanson. Myself, I'm here.
Very good. Then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Tom, can you lead us, please? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, I don't. You guys
Okay.
stay over there.
Public communication. I'm going to pass on reading it since there does not appear to be any member of the public. If they come in, I'll come back to that. I don't think that obviates or anything the proceedings if I don't actually read the public communications boilerplate. God, I hope not. In any case, building officials report.
No report.
Very good. Okay, then we have one consent item. That's the minutes of the Building Appeals Board meeting of September 11, 2019. Is that a voice vote or a no vote? I'm trying to recall. Do you have any
I make a
objections?
motion that we accept as provided.
Okay, fabulous. And is there a second? Okay. All right. So then we have, as our lone discussion item, we have discuss Chapter 9 of the Ventura County Fire Protection District Ordinance 31. With a recommendation from staff, consider a recommendation to council regarding Chapter 9 of Ventura County Fire Protection District Ordinance 31. And at that point, I will turn it over to the building official for a clarification of what is presented.
Good afternoon. This is the fire ordinance that comes upon us every 3 years, just like the building code. And so as part of that, it means ratification and adoption by the city. So what we're here to do, the fire department has requested that it be on the next city council meeting, which is December 10th. So to get it in on there, staff recognizes the process for building code changes has to come to the BAB for discussion with their recommendations so that we can present those recommendations to council on December 10th. We have notified the fire department of the meeting, and it appears they have elected not to show up. As did I, because I had some questions. I don't know if you were copied on that email, but I had some questions very specific to the fire prevention district and Chief Aragi or Officer Torres or someone who could perhaps clarify some background as well as some specific technical specifics. So I was hoping that they would show up, but as you indicated, they elected not to. So I have I'm going to let me, if I may, start with two questions, actually three questions. Who specifically with the fire department made this request of you to submit this to before us? It was through the city manager's office. I'm not exactly sure who.
Came through the city manager's office? At fire.
Well, the request came through the city manager's office. I don't know exactly who requested.
If you could, I'd like to know that.
Okay.
Okay, number one. Because this hadn't come up before, or at least to my attention, previous to this. Okay, so how does, how do you feel about this?
I'm here for your recommendations.
Okay, so in other words, it was passed on through, and have you had a chance to review it?
I have reviewed it.
Okay, and how is it different, if at all, from state fire code?
So
all of Chapter 9 that is presented here are the modifications to the State Fire Code.
Okay, but modifications, they can't make it less
Restricted. correct.
restrictive, so
It's more
you're saying the entirety of Chapter 9 is a modification that is more restrictive?
The items in this Chapter 9 right here are making more restrictive, from what I understand.
Okay, and has anyone shared with you a basis for that?
No, not for me.
No, there isn't any.
I'm just here to facilitate the ordinance. That's it.
Okay, and that's what we were hoping to have some
Fire
folks from
difference.
the Fire Prevention District here to clarify.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure how from a formal title, should you be Assistant City Manager or Community Development Director or just Joe?
Joe's
Okay,
fine.
fabulous. In that case, Joe, have you had a chance do you have any background on this or at all? Have you had a chance to review it? Or do you-
No, again, I'm not the technical expert on this. This is a pass-through ordinance from, recommended by the fire district
Okay.
for the city to adopt.
Okay, so perhaps then, and also for the public who might watch this or be watching this, this, as I recall, this is the fourth submission of essentially the same set of restrictive ordinances. They more or less relate more specifically and fundamentally to residential fire sprinkler requirements. And this has been presented here to this board. This is the third time since I've been on the board, and I think it's the fourth time since the board was created and impaneled by the city. So every 2 years. So from a practical perspective, my observation that and your apparent affirmation as well, is that Chapter 9 of the Ventura County Fire Protection District Ordinance 31 not only exceeds the State Fire Code, but I'm going to presume the State Fire Marshals looked at this and has elected not to include it in the State Fire Code for at least the last 8 years. So I think I would gainsay that the State Fire Marshal probably knows a little bit more about this, probably than anybody else, including the Ventura County Fire Protection District. Do we have anybody want, Mr. Daddy?
I'm not comfortable with this type of document being presented over and over and over. What I would have liked to seen is a color coding. We've done this many times in the past. You can use any rainbow color you want. Red, which is a change, blue, which is a deletion, strikeouts and modifications, italicized, anything that would designate that there's a change to this document that isn't exactly the same as the last three that were rejected. It's kind of tough to go in here without looking at the last 8 years, finding everything in here and seeing what the difference is, and then seeing what the benefits are. So I would request that before this goes to City Council, so we can make it a little easier on them, that this go back to the fire department, and the fire department color code this, or present it with no changes. If there's no changes, then that's great, but if there are changes, it would be really nice to see what they changed since we started with Appendix 28, and we have gone through this to this iteration right now. So,
We will pass that request along to the fire district.
and I would hope that that becomes a city standard.
It makes it a little easier to
where
digest
all
and
documents don't have to go back 2-3 years and research. Whenever we get a document on the same item or a modification to something existing or proposed, I believe that it should be coded. The city did this about a dozen years ago, and we made the city go back 5 times and reprint the document 5 times, right, Dale? Because what they told us was, well, there's 77,000 rules and we don't know what's going on. And so, 6, 8 months, 10 months later, when the message finally got across, we got a color coded. I can get you a sample of that document. It's old, but at least you can see what the format is. It made it really easy. Blue's the proposed changes. This one is going to be deleted. This one's going to be that. And then it's pretty simple, because wading through this again, you have to go through a lot of reference. Okay? Thank you.
Anybody else have?
No, except I'm weary of this because we've been through this so many times. This is the 4th time, and each time we've denied the fire sprinklers, which this is mostly what it's about. I'm not on, I have to move my microphone.
Do you want to turn it on and restate it?
Yes, except that we've been through this 4 times already, as I count, at least 4. And each time we've denied the fire sprinklers. We don't feel that that's the best way for fire protection. And we have many examples, which I won't go through right now to say that. But I hope that we can put this to rest unless there's a reason we have to do it, and I don't know of any. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I have actually, before we take a vote on this, two comments. Are you all going to want to make any comments?
Ogres.
Because I'll hold the public comments at the end, if you like.
At the end.
Yeah, at the end. Okay, all right. Then I'll read the public communications boilerplate at that time, and that is the that I'm somewhat concerned about. And perhaps I'm misreading this entirely, but I'm somewhat concerned that there's at this particular point, without the fire department who are promoting this, showing up to have a presence, that unfortunately their support of this is become now a de facto condition. I'm more concerned with what I've noted in the past, and I've shared this with at least the 2 previous fire chiefs for Ojai, was that because first the Building Appeals Board, and then at least on one occasion the City Council has denied this request and would not agree to a ratification and adoption of what amounts to is essentially residential fire sprinkler ordinance. There's and once again, this is just my opinion, my sense, my feeling, but that specifically the Ventura County Fire Protection District is not supporting their end of the enforcement spectrum in the city of Ojai relative to the state fire code. And I'm seeing instances of that pretty much everywhere I look. And I'm also going back to, in the previous water purveyor, Golden State, as well as the current public agency, Casitas, although they're working on it. The Ventura County Fire Department has I'm going to say failed to support the fire code insofar as the city of Ojai's water service. It has never, and to this day, does not comply with state fire code regarding pressure or volume at most of our fire hydrants throughout the city. Most of our, how many are there? 305, 315? Something like that. So in any case, and this has gone around and around, for several years, at least 6 that I'm aware of, perhaps 7. And so the issue from my perspective is if you're not doing so well enforcing the existing fire code, why would you expect acquiescence and agreement on the part of this community to adopt
additional ordinances that may or may not be enforced. And that just doesn't sit well. So, on that note, could you please do a roll call vote, please? Oh, excuse me. Yes, let's have a further discussion. Excuse me.
I would like to know precisely the motion we're voting on.
Oh, that's true. I didn't. Excuse me.
And if I may, I believe we do have one comment from the public.
Oh, you would like to do that? Okay, excuse me, I'm off track here. No, we can't vote first. We're going to listen to public communication. And I'm first going to say, public communications is the time set aside during the Building Appeals Board meeting for members of the public to address the Building Appeals Board on items of city business other than scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the board and will generally be referred to staff and be placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action on a non-agendized item can be taken at this meeting. However, so I have to ask, are you going to be speaking in general or on the agendized single item?
It's kind of general and a combo.
Okay. In that case, then you are, please identify yourself and start speaking.
Thank you, everybody. It's a little bit vacant here because it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 1:30. Hard for people to come to this, but I am a business owner on Bryant Street. And first of all, I give Tom and Joe, cut them some slack because they're new. So this is a long history, this story. And I feel, as a business owner on Bryant, looking at another parcel on Bryant, the Adamsons property, which is now for sale, doing some investigating on that property, I come to find out, and this is a big political swirly now going around the city. And the Adamsons added onto their building 8-9 years ago, and they were told they needed to put in fire sprinklers, which they did, spent I think $40,000 on that, and they're in the building, but they never connected it to the street. Having said that, 8 years later, they came to me, and I helped them with permits, got an encroachment permit, talked to the Indian tribe, met with Casitas, got it all lined up. In the meantime, somewhere along the line, the fire department comes back and says, now you don't have to connect the fire sprinklers to the street. And after they have red tagged the building, because it's not connected to the fire sprinklers, the Adamsons, somebody told them to move out, they moved out, which was not inexpensive. And now the fire department is saying they don't have to connect the sprinklers at all. They don't have to have any sprinklers. And I was a fireman years ago in Taft, and I know enough from going through the academy. Fire sprinklers in a commercial building are not a bad idea, and that must have been required 8 years ago for a reason. And so since then, the fire sprinklers have not been connected, not been signed off by the Ventura County Fire. The city has not finalized the building. They still have a construction loan on the building, which has got to be a huge interest rate, to the detriment of the Adamsons. And this whole thing has turned into a big political swirly for them and for the new buyer, whatever is going to happen. So my question is, now the fire department has reversed course, and after the Adamsons have signed a contract to connect the fire sprinklers to the street with the fire district, they say it's now discretional. It's our discretion. You can connect them, you can not connect them, we don't care. Red tags have many meanings, right? What the hell's going on? So I don't know what's going on behind the scenes and what the politics are of all this, but what I do know is that the Adamsons moved out of their building. There's fire sprinklers in the building. They're not connected to the street. The fire department now says you can remove them from the building. And I've spent a bunch of money on permits to help them connect the fire sprinklers to the street. So my question, I guess, is if everything is discretional, if enforcement is discretional with the city of Ojai, if holding someone accountable to a contract they've signed with the Ventura County Fire Department, everything is discretional. If red tags don't mean anything, you can give somebody a rainbow tag. this is a horrible precedent. This is a horrible precedent for the fire district and for the city. Me, I'm not going to go away. I'm a young man, relatively. I've been here for 51 years now. And so if I develop something, this is a precedent for me. I don't have to do anything. Or I can do it my way, or I can wait 8 years until the law changes. What are we doing? So my question, this is a very important topic going forward, because I have a friend who's got 2 cars that don't run in his driveway, and the city is threatening to fine him real money. A friend of mine that works in the oil field, he doesn't have the money to pay fines, threatening to fine him, sending him threatening letters. Meanwhile, there's an auto dismantling yard, like pick-apart, operating on 2 acres of dirt at the Adamsons for decades. No CUP. I just got I have 2 CUPs now on Bryant Street, across the street from the Adamsons. One so you can sleep in a trailer legally. They're renting out trailers on the Adamsons property with extension cords going from the red tag building. And I've got another CUP, which I just obtained for beer and wine. 2 CUPs, 2 conditional use permits to legally do something and have a business on land. You have a situation across the street from me, you can do whatever you want. So now you know, and I want to know, what the hell is going to happen?
I have a question. You can't be telling the truth about 51. You don't look a day over 33.
Yeah, I'm actually 55, came here when I was 4 in Santa Cruz. So my question to all of you, and I know all of you personally because I've lived here in town my whole life, this is not a good situation to say it's okay to destroy boats and motorhomes in the dirt and dump the oil out on the ground from the engines. We're supposed to be about the environment. I mean, you have people running around town giving citations to gardeners that have a gas-powered leaf blower, and you're dismantling cars and boats and RVs in the dirt. What the hell's going on?
So you're talking about Adamson's, which is a
Yes.
commercial building.
Yep.
Do you know what the square footage of what they added on? Because under some circumstances, and I think they probably are over that amount, but if they're not, you don't have to. Am I not correct? You don't
They
have to?
tripled the size.
Oh, then it sounds like it, yeah.
I would just caution the board not to deliberate on items that are not on
Okay,
the
you're right, 'cause
agenda.
he's a public speaker, sorry.
So
Question.
I have spent a lot of time behind the scenes working to figure out what's going on and really to help the Adamsons. And I can't get any answers. But one thing I have found out is that probably there's a high turnover rate in the city of Ojai, and that's why we have so many of these things bubble to the surface. Probably the next person to go is going to be Matt Summers. I don't know how he can defend this. If I want to develop something and the city requires me to do something, I'm going to say, precedent. I don't have to do that.
Probably for the city council.
Yeah. Recall the mayor. Thank you.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
We're
Okay.
ready for a vote?
All right, well, actually, it occurred to me that you want to have a motion in a second,
Yes.
or at least clarify the motion.
I don't think we have a motion.
I'm not really sure how this would work, but my motion would be that this not go before the city council until the changes can be identified through a color coding, italicized, quote, some other type of distinction to make it, we're here to allow the council to get through some of these technicalities where they can look at it and they can absorb it and understand it. And if it doesn't delineate, then I would make a motion that it not be presented to city council until they can come back.
I'll second that.
And I would also add language in the motion that they go ahead and put on the formal presentation when it does get to council, those dates that it was previously presented, so the city council can look at the history, and then it can see what the changes
And
are.
when you say those dates, you're talking about the specific articles that reference
The specific
aspects of
dates, the specific date they came to the building appeal board for a vote.
Okay.
So I'd like them to list the prior 3 or 4 times that it has been
Of
before the
this-
board
Of essentially the same ordinance?
of Appendix 28, and then it
Yeah,
moves on.
because the numbers keep changing. It's still essentially the same.
It's still the old
Okay.
Appendix 28, but I think the city council needs to know how many years it has and how many times it's come back and what the current changes are, because it's like reading a mortgage contract. It's difficult, so let's give them a chance to absorb it and get
Has
it.
anybody, has anybody looked at this before it came back to us? I mean.
Yeah, I looked at it. Didn't you look at it?
A couple,
well,
couple
no,
of days
I mean-
ago,
Before it came
I
back
mean,
to us.
between.
no,
If I can help I'm sorry to interrupt, but if I can help the board, we're trying to frame the motion, and let's try and finish that and then we can have deliberation on the motion or on the second even, before taking a vote. So
I'll restate my motion.
Help frame that motion and then,
All right.
and then
I'll
have
restate
that
my
discussion.
I make a motion that this not be delivered to the city council until the information can be identified as to any changes, and an enumeration or a listing or a calendar of all the previous times this same item has come before the board and the vote that was done at that time.
okay, so you're saying a historical documentation of
Yes.
this content.
A calendar of events of what's happened.
Okay, is that, would you like it a little,
If I could just
Edited,
clarify with
or you-
that, I think the technical term we would use would be legislative format. That's usually strike out and underline format. We will, the motion is that we request the fire district to provide us that information prior to referring this to city
legislative
council.
format of revisions?
Correct. With the dates of
Calendar.
previous dates that
Of
is,
submittal.
it's been previously submitted to the city of Ojai.
Yeah.
Or action taken, actually, because we did vote each time, so action and what that action was.
Okay.
Do I have a
I
second?
Is there
second
a
that.
second?
I
Yes.
second it.
All right, very good.
A question, does that history then also include what the city council, when it has been presented to the city council, in what format or what changes may have been made to it since?
I think what we'll do is we would, as part of it,
Simple.
well, the request will be made of the fire district to provide that. They may or may not do that. However, in our report, the report that we prepare to the city council, we will note those previous dates.
Okay,
Okay, we'll take a
Ready for
vote.
a vote?
Okay, Chair Bill Ulrich,
yes.
Vice Chair Tom Farmer,
Yes.
Board Member Bob Daddy,
Yes.
Board Member Judy Murphy,
Yes.
and myself, Dale Hansen, yes. So that's,
And then I'd like to make a second motion that we take a formal vote on whether we see this should be accepted by the city. That was a format, and that was a history, and that would have had to do with the content. But now to take a vote on the actual changes as to the relevance of the city of Ojai. So I'd like to make a motion that we take a vote onto the recommendation for adopting or rejecting. My motion was a different motion. That was just kind of a cleanup motion. So if somebody would like to restate that or have a second?
so are you saying that you're proposing a motion that we reject this as it is?
I'd like us to vote on it, and everybody gets to say what they think, and then we'll vote on it.
Well, I will second it.
I think it would be more proper to have the discussion among the board whether they support, individuals support it or not, and then one board member would present that formal motion.
Well, as I said before, we've turned this down 4 times, and I'm in agreement with the motion as presented. Not to accept it.
Is there going to be any public comment on this matter before it goes to
No.
all right, well, so what do you recommend?
Well, there hasn't, I believe Mr. Daddy was forming a motion,
Discussion.
but
In
had not formed the motion yet. I think we heard where he was heading, but the motion was not formed.
Is the motion that we are not, that we're rejecting this?
I make a motion that we reject this, as I don't see any changes that I can identify.
Right.
We don't have any representation to be able to identify any changes or additional benefits.
That's the motion.
And
Correct. The motion is
therefore,
to
I would make a motion that we reject this.
Second that.
reject as presented.
Okay?
So the whole key is, we're not identifying what we looked at before. There's no representation. I mean, we have nothing before us that indicates what happened the last 4 or 5 times, right?
Right?
Yeah, we don't know, so we're just,
Right.
yeah,
No, I agree. It's hard to make a
decision.
recommendation if you don't know what you recommended 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, you could, take
I
a
could-
flyer at it, but,
I could take
Okay.
a shot at it.
all right.
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, Lynn, want to do a roll call?
Judy needs to.
No,
Oh, Judy?
I'm good.
Okay,
A roll call is Chair Bill Ulrich,
yes.
Vice Chair Tom Farmer, Board Member Bob Daddy,
Yes.
Board Member Judy Murphy,
Yes.
and myself, yes.
Okay, all right, do we have Councilmember Haney is not present, probably working. That I'm relaying to the Building Appeals Board Liaison Report. We also, I would gainsay that perhaps the same thing for Planning Commissioner Powers relative to the Planning Commission report. So at this point, I'm going to say we're going to adjourn this meeting at 1:31.
Thank you, Bill.
I'd like to thank everybody.
Thank you.
I think this did anything. Chat, he said he paid $40,000 or something he didn't need.
And you're going to say, as